It's been a long week for me, and I'm coming to you with this Iowa-Michigan State preview a little later than I would typically prefer. But what better way to spend the end of a long week than under the lights at Kinnick Stadium? The Hawkeyes will play host to the Michigan State Spartans, a team in total disarray after their head coach got officially dismissed earlier this week. Should be an interesting crowd. It's a blackout in Kinnick Stadium. And Iowa fans expected to be raucous despite coming off that 31-0 beatdown out in Happy Valley last weekend. We'll talk about it. I'll kind of give you my overarching thoughts on the game here in a second. But first, I want to thank our sponsor, Iowa Floor Covering, and their Tough Core Click Together 4.5 millimeter waterproof vinyl flooring. They've been with us for well over a year. We appreciate Tyler, Ryan, and the guys down in Bondurant. Again, it's iowafloorcovering.com/DIY for their Tough Core Click Together 4.5 millimeter waterproof vinyl flooring, available at just $269 per foot when you install it yourself. Again, we appreciate IFC in Central Iowa. So it's the Hawkeyes and the Spartans under the light, a blackout game. Iowa fresh off the whiteout experience out in very unhappy Valley in Pennsylvania. And we know the storylines. We don't need to return back to last Saturday. It does feel like it's been more than a week. At least it feels like it's been more than 6-7 days since that Iowa-Penn State game. And I think it was just such an abysmal evening that for me, I've kind of just flushed it and thought, regardless of the result, regardless of the score, it is just one loss. And I know that Iowa fans don't want to hear that. They're upset about the offense. They're upset about Brian. They're upset about Kirk. But it is just one loss. And as I said throughout the week, as I said during the postgame show on Saturday, given Iowa's schedule, this team still has an opportunity to win the West. They still have an opportunity to win the Big Ten, given the schedule. Like, am I predicting Iowa beats Penn State, Ohio State, or Michigan in the Big Ten championship game? No. But I'm simply saying if you get there, you've got a shot. And you may disagree with that stance, but that's kind of how I feel about this. And the schedule just makes out for a very successful year. We've talked about that up and down. This is not a very good Michigan State team. They've recruited better since Mel Tucker took over there than maybe they have in a while. They obviously had a lot of money invested in Mel Tucker, and right now he's going to be filing a lawsuit against the university. Of course, there's claims that he sexually harassed a sexual assault liaison person, awareness individual who was working with the team and working with Michigan State. Really messy situation. He, of course, is claiming that that was simply part of his personal life, but he has been officially dismissed from the team. He has announced he'll be filing a lawsuit against Michigan State. How does this affect the team? We know the last 2 weeks, Michigan State's been a disaster. They got blown out by Washington. They got blown out by Maryland. Although that game was closer at points than certainly the Washington game was. But they've given up over 70 points the last 2 games. If you look at their numbers as a whole on defense, they're pretty much lower third of the Big Ten, but they're not bottom of the barrel. They're around 9th or 10th in most of the stats that matter. We're talking rush defense, total defense, etc., scoring defense. So how will they be able to perform against an Iowa offense that looked absolutely atrocious last week? I understand Iowa fans who say, hey, how's Iowa going to score 20 points? I posted on Twitter earlier, over under an Iowa 20-point win. And I believe that is probably should be the standard. I think the line right now is closer to actually Iowa by 10. But, I mean, we have not really seen Michigan State have any semblance of itself since all this controversy started. And Maryland, Washington, 2 solid offensive teams. They also have 2 really good quarterbacks. Those are 2 of the best quarterbacks in the country, Michael Penix Jr. and Talia Tagovailoa. So I don't know that Iowa can beat them through the air as much as those teams did. I mean, Michael Penix could have thrown for 1,000 yards in that game. I mean, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but his numbers in that game were insane, and he left the game early. Obviously, Iowa typically plays pretty well under the lights, and I don't expect Iowa to struggle like they did last week to establish the run. They are at home. I could see them breaking off a couple of runs. It does sound like Caleb Johnson, Jazz Patterson are going to be out once again for this game. And, of course, Luke Lachey is likely done for the season. But my biggest thing here, folks, is you've got to get these wide receivers involved. And I know that's kind of been the narrative around Hawkeye Nation this week, and I think it's fair. They've got to get Caleb Brown the ball. They've got to get Seth Anderson the ball. The fact that Caleb Brown has 0 catches through 4 games is unbelievable and ridiculous and unacceptable. And regardless of what Kirk and Brian say and what Cade and Nico Reganey say, they need to make a concerted effort, regardless if that falls on play calling or decision-making from Cade. I would tend to lean more towards its play calling. It is schematics, it's route trees, etc. And I've had conversations with Coach Patterson about it. He feels the same way as it relates to Iowa needing to get these guys involved, get them the ball more. And this will show up, as it has the last couple of years. This will show up via attrition in the offseason if they can't get these guys more involved. Nico Reganey will be graduating. Would you be shocked if Seth Anderson and Caleb Brown transferred out of the program? Now, granted, they've used their one-time transfer rule, but man, guys are transferring like there's no tomorrow anyways. So obviously you want to win this game primarily, but there's been a lot of turmoil within the program. I know I talked about it on a live show on Thursday night. I was told on good authority that those comments that Cade McNamara made on Tuesday about play calling, if you missed those, I'm sure you can YouTube them, Google them, and find those, listen to those comments. Those comments did not go over well with certain people on the coaching staff. You can probably guess who I'm talking about. But Cade's leadership is strong. We've been hearing that throughout the last year, or close to the last year since he committed to Iowa. So I believe he'll have rallied the troops, and I think Iowa takes care of business. I'm not going to give you a score prediction right now, but as long as they can be decent on the ground, I have a hard time seeing Michigan State being real successful offensively. The one thing they did do well under Mel Tucker was score points. Now Peyton Thorne, he left for Auburn before the season started. Obviously, the offense is in shambles with the controversy. They've not been able to score many points over the last couple of weeks. They've just gotten throttled. So Iowa should be able to, especially with a bounce back week coming, I think, from Phil Parker's unit, because the defense wasn't great last week. It was not bad. I know they gave up 31 points, but it was not bad. They gave up no explosive plays, no plays of 20-plus yards last week, but it will be better this week, and I think Iowa takes care of business. But again, can they get these receivers involved? And what's the margin for victory? What do they need to win by to make Iowa fans feel better? I mean, I know Kirk is going to say, hey, a win's a win, whether it's 1 or 21. But I made the comment earlier this week, I'd like to see Iowa win by 25 or 30. And even then, I'm not going to be totally sold. Regardless of what the offense looks like, I'm not going to be sold because this is not a very good Michigan State team. But if they squeak by in this game or somehow lose, it's pitchforks and torches. This is a must-win game. I know we throw that term out there a lot. This is a must-win game in Kinnick. Blackout, 6:30 p.m. Central Time on NBC. I'll be with you live following the game with Coach John Patterson. Tune in live right here from the Hawkeye of the Storm as we recap the Spartans and the Hawkeyes Saturday night under the lights. We'll talk to you then.